I never expected to come home from my third deployment to Afghanistan and find strangers living in my house. But there I was, standing in the driveway of my bungalow in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at 6:30 on a Thursday morning in late September, watching smoke curl from my chimney while children's voices echoed from inside. The taxi driver had already pulled away. My duffel bag sat at my feet, and I had no idea what the hell was happening. The flight from Bagram had taken 32 hours with layovers. I hadn't slept in 48. My back ached from the shrapnel wound that had ended my career 2 months early, and all I wanted was to collapse on my own couch, drink a beer, and figure out what 53-year-old veterans did with the rest of their lives when the army decided they were too broken to keep. Instead, I was staring at curtains in my window that I'd never seen before, floral things that would have made my late wife Sarah laugh. She'd always hated floral patterns. Sarah had been gone for 6 years now. Cancer, the kind that moved fast and didn't care that we'd only had 15 years together instead of 50. The house had been empty since then, locked up tight while I did my deployments. I'd paid a property management company called Midwest Home Services to check on it monthly, keep the lawn mowed, make sure pipes didn't freeze. Simple stuff. They'd never mentioned tenants. I walked up to the front door, my hand instinctively checking for the keys on my dog tag chain. The porch had a new welcome mat, one of those cheerful ones that said, "Home Sweet Home," in looping letters. There were rain boots by the door, small ones. A bicycle leaned against the porch railing, pink with white streamers hanging from the handlebars. Through the front window, I could see movement, shadows passing back and forth. I knocked, firmly. 3 times. Military habit. The door opened, and a woman stood there, maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and flour on her hands. She wore jeans and an Iowa Hawkeyes sweatshirt, and her face went from confused to alarmed in about 2 seconds. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm David Fletcher," I said. "I own this house. Want to tell me why you're in it?" Her face went white. She gripped the doorframe. "Oh, God. Oh, no. You're supposed to be deployed until December. They told me December." "Who told you December, and who the hell are you?" Before she could answer, a little girl appeared behind her, maybe 7 years old, with the same dark hair and curious brown eyes. "Mama, who is it? Is it Daddy?" The woman, the mother, put her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Go back to the kitchen, sweetie. Finish your breakfast. Everything's fine." "But Mama, now please." The girl disappeared, but I could hear her whispering to someone else, probably a sibling. The woman stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind her. She was shaking. "My name is Rachel Brennan," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I thought I had the house until December. The leasing company, they set everything up. I paid first and last month's rent, security deposit, everything. I have the paperwork inside." "What leasing company?" "Midwest Home Services. I've been here since April. 6 months. I pay on time. I keep everything clean. I haven't changed anything permanent, I swear." My mind was racing. Midwest Home Services, the same company I'd been paying to watch the house. They'd been renting it out behind my back. "Let me see your lease," I said. She nodded quickly, disappeared inside, came back with a folder. Her hands trembled as she handed it to me. I flipped it open. Official-looking contract, Midwest Home Services letterhead, signatures, dates, rent amount, $1,200 a month. Term, April 1st through December 31st. Everything looked legitimate except for one problem. I'd never authorized any of it. "This is fraud," I said flatly. "I never gave permission for anyone to rent this house." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know, I swear I didn't know. I went through an agency. I did everything right. I have 2 kids. We needed a place after my husband died. This was all I could afford. I felt something twist in my chest. After my husband died." I looked at her, really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes, the way she held herself, like she was ready to bolt or fight, whichever was necessary. The flour on her hands because she'd been making breakfast for her kids. "How did he die?" I asked, my voice softer. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Marine Corps. He was a staff sergeant, Helmand Province, IED. 2 years ago, next month." The address on her lease was my address. The woman standing in front of me was a Gold Star widow with 2 kids, living in my house because some scumbag property management company had seen an opportunity to make money off an absent soldier and a desperate widow. I looked past her at the closed door, thought about the little girl asking if I was her daddy, thought about my own empty apartment in whatever city I'd end up in now, thought about Sarah and how she'd always said I had a good heart, even when the army tried to train it out of me. "How old are your kids?" I asked. "Emma's 7, Luke's 4. I nodded slowly. "Here's what's going to happen. You're not moving out today. I need to deal with Midwest Home Services, figure out what the hell they've done. But you and your kids aren't getting thrown out on the street because of fraud you didn't commit." She stared at me. "What? Give me a few days to sort this out. You stay put. Keep paying your rent to escrow or something until we figure out who owes what to whom. I'll find somewhere else to crash. I don't understand. This is your house." "Yeah, but you didn't know that. And your husband died serving the same country I did. I'm not making his kids homeless. I'll be back tomorrow to figure things out." I picked up my duffel bag and walked back down the driveway before she could respond, before I could change my mind, before the exhaustion and pain and anger could catch up with me. I made it 3 blocks before I had to sit down on a bench at Miller Park, my back screaming, my eyes burning, wondering what the hell I was going to do now. I ended up at a motel off Route 380, one of those budget places with thin walls and a vending machine that only took exact change. $65 a night, which would eat through my savings fast. I threw my bag on the bed and called Midwest Home Services. The receptionist was cheerful, too cheerful. "Midwest Home Services, how may I direct your call? I need to speak to whoever's in charge of the property at 415 Oak Street in Cedar Rapids." "One moment, please. Hold music." Some instrumental version of a song I didn't recognize. Then a man's voice, smooth and professional. "This is Greg Morton, property manager. How can I help you? You can help me by explaining why there are tenants in my house when I never authorized you to rent it out." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, who is this?" "David Fletcher, the owner of 415 Oak Street, the one who's been paying you $200 a month to maintain an empty property for the last 3 years." More silence. Then, "Mr. Fletcher, yes, I have your file here. You're supposed to be deployed until December. I came home early. Medical discharge. And I want to know why Rachel Brennan has a lease for my house. Sir, I need to check with my supervisor. Can I call you back?" "No. You can explain it to me now, or you can explain it to my lawyer." He cleared his throat. "Mr. Fletcher, I understand you're upset, but per the terms of your contract with us, Section 7, subsection C, we have the right to rent the property during extended absences to offset maintenance costs if the property remains vacant for longer than 18 months. That's bullshit and you know it. I never agreed to that. It's in the contract you signed. Then show me. Send me the contract right now. I'll have to pull it from our archives. It might take a few days. You have until tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And you better hope there's actually a clause like that, because if there's not, I'm suing you for fraud, theft, and whatever else my lawyer can think of. Clear? Mr. Fletcher, tomorrow, 5 p.m. My email's on file." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I'd dealt with insurgents, IEDs, firefights that lasted hours, but something about this, about coming home to find my life violated by people who were supposed to be helping me, made me angrier than I'd been in years. The next morning, I drove back to Oak Street. Rachel answered the door almost immediately, like she'd been watching for me. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Come in," she said quietly. "Please." The house looked different than I remembered. Cleaner somehow. There were toys in a basket by the couch, children's drawings on the refrigerator, a smell of coffee and something baking. It looked lived in. It looked like a home, which was something it hadn't been since Sarah died. "The kids were at school," Rachel said. I didn't know what to tell them. "Emma keeps asking if we have to move again. We've moved 4 times since Mike died." She gestured to the couch. I sat. She sat across from me in the armchair, hands clasped together so tight her knuckles were white. "I called Midwest Home Services yesterday," I said. "They're claiming they had the right to rent the house under my contract with them. They're sending me the paperwork today." Rachel nodded. "I researched them last night. There are complaints, online reviews from other landlords saying they did the same thing, rented out properties without permission, pocketed the money. One case went to court last year. What happened with that case? The company settled. Paid damages but admitted no wrongdoing. The owners are still operating. Of course they are. I leaned back, felt the twinge in my back where the shrapnel had torn through. So they're scam artists who prey on deployed soldiers and desperate widows. Rachel's voice was bitter. I should have known it was too good to be true. A 3-bedroom house in a good school district for $1,200 a month? But I was so tired of living in Mike's parents' basement, and the kids needed space, and I wanted to give them something stable. You couldn't have known. I should have done more research. Should have verified everything. She wiped her eyes. I'm so sorry. This is your house. I had no right. Stop. I held up my hand. You did everything right. You went through what you thought was a legitimate agency. You signed a legal-looking contract. You paid your rent. This isn't your fault, but where are we supposed to go? That's what I want to talk to you about. I need to think through something, and I need you to hear me out before you say no. She looked at me warily. Okay, I'm 53 years old. I'm medically discharged with a back injury that means I can't do most of the jobs I'm qualified for. I have no family, no kids, no wife. This house has been empty for 6 years because I couldn't stand to live in it after Sarah died, and I kept deploying because I didn't know what else to do with myself. I came home yesterday, expecting to finally face that emptiness and figure out what comes next. I paused. She waited. But here's the thing, I walked in here, and for the first time in 6 years, this place felt like a home. Your kids' drawings on the fridge, the smell of baking. Signs that people actually live here instead of it being a mausoleum for my dead marriage. And I thought about my wife, about what she would say if she saw me throw a widow and her kids out on the street because of something that wasn't their fault. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to make you an offer. Stay. Pay whatever rent you can reasonably afford directly to me, not some scam company. Live here until you're back on your feet, or until you find somewhere better. In exchange, I'd like to stay in the spare bedroom in the basement. It's got its own entrance, its own bathroom. I won't be in your way. Rachel stared at me. You want to live in your own basement? I don't need much space. And I figure you and the kids need the upstairs more than I do. Plus, if we're both paying toward utilities and maintenance, it's cheaper for everyone. You get stability for your kids. I get to not live in a motel while I figure out my next move. Everybody wins. I don't understand why you do this. Because your husband died in Helmand Province, and I know what Helmand was like. Because you've got 2 kids who've already lost their dad, and they don't need to lose their home too. And because I'm tired of being alone in empty spaces. She was crying now, silently, tears running down her face. We can't afford much. I work at the hospital, administrative stuff. It pays okay, but not great. And I've got medical bills from Mike, student loans, childcare, whatever you can manage. 405, we'll figure it out. That's not enough. You could rent this place for 1,500 easily. I don't need 1,500. I need to do something decent before I turn into a bitter old man who dies alone with nobody at his funeral. Rachel laughed through her tears. You're not old. Tell that to my back. So what do you say? Can we try this for a few months? See how it works? She nodded. Okay, yes, thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Help me move my stuff into the basement. That'll be thanks enough. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, an email arrived from Greg Morton at Midwest Home Services. Attached was a scanned contract dated 3 years ago with a signature that was supposedly mine. I looked at it for 30 seconds and knew it was forged. The signature was close, but not quite right. The date was wrong. I'd been in Germany for training when that contract was supposedly signed in Cedar Rapids. I forwarded it to a lawyer, a guy named Tom Bradford, who'd been recommended by another vet at the VA hospital. Tom called me back in an hour. This is fraud, he said flatly. Clear as day. That signature's not even a good fake. We can have them shut down and prosecuted. I'll file paperwork on Monday. How long will it take? Civil case. Could be months. But I can get an injunction to stop them from renting any more properties pretty quickly. And we can make them return all the rent money they collected on your place. All of it? Every penny. It's your house. They had no right to that money. What about Rachel, the woman who's been paying rent? She's a victim too. Depending on how the judge sees it, she might be entitled to damages. At minimum, she'll get her deposit and last month's rent back. Okay, do it. Whatever it takes to shut these people down, consider it done. And Mr. Fletcher, thank you for your service. I hung up and went downstairs to the basement. It was exactly as I remembered it. Unfinished walls, concrete floor, but Sarah and I had made one corner into a guest space years ago. Single bed, dresser, small TV. The bathroom was cramped but functional. It wasn't much, but I'd slept in worse places. Way worse places. That night, I heard footsteps on the floor above me. The creak of floorboards, water running through pipes. The muffled sound of Rachel reading a bedtime story to the kids. It was strange and comforting at the same time, knowing I wasn't alone in this house anymore. The next week fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected. Rachel worked mornings at the hospital, so I'd hear her getting the kids ready for school at 7, the chaos of breakfast and backpacks and lost shoes. I'd stay in the basement until they left, then come upstairs to make coffee and figure out what to do with my day. The house felt different than I remembered. Sarah and I had bought it in 1998, back when Cedar Rapids was still affordable and the neighborhood was full of young families. We'd planned to fill it with kids, but cancer had other plans. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to change anything. Her books were still on the shelves. Her coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Wife," still sat in the cabinet. Her garden in the backyard had gone to weeds, but I couldn't bring myself to pull them out. Now, walking through the house in the mornings, I saw Rachel's touches everywhere. New curtains that actually matched, plants on the windowsills that were alive and thriving, pictures of Emma and Luke on the fridge next to their school schedules and permission slips. It should have felt like an invasion, like someone had erased Sarah's memory. Instead, it felt like the house was breathing again. The VA had appointments scheduled throughout the week, physical therapy for my back on Mondays and Thursdays, meetings with a career counselor named Dennis, who seemed determined to convince me that retail management was a viable option for a guy who'd spent 30 years in the army. I went through the motions, but my heart wasn't in it. The physical therapy was brutal. A therapist named Monica, former army herself, would work on my back while I gritted my teeth and tried not to scream. The shrapnel had torn through muscle and nerves, left me with chronic pain that flared up when the weather changed, or when I moved wrong, or sometimes just because it felt like it. "You're compensating," Monica said during one session, her hands pressing into the knot of scar tissue above my left hip. "You're favoring your right side, which is throwing everything else out of alignment. You need to retrain your body to move correctly." Easier said than done. "Yeah, well, nobody said recovering from war wounds was easy, but you've got motivation now, right? I heard you've got kids in the house. They're not my kids," she raised an eyebrow. "You fixing their bikes?" "Yeah." "Eating dinner with them?" "Yeah." "Then they're your kids." Biology's just paperwork. The career counseling sessions were worse. Dennis would pull up job listings on his computer and try to sell me on positions I had zero interest in. Warehouse supervisor, security guard, assistant manager at a big box store. Nothing that used any of the skills I'd spent 3 decades developing. "You've got leadership experience," he'd say. "That translates to management. I led soldiers in combat zones. That's not the same as managing a team at Target. Skills are skills, David. You just have to reframe them." But I couldn't reframe them. Couldn't see how coordinating supply drops under enemy fire translated to inventory management. Couldn't see how making life or death decisions in seconds prepared me to handle customer complaints about expired coupons. The civilian world felt like a different planet, and I didn't speak the language. One afternoon I came home from a particularly frustrating session with Dennis to find Luke, the 4-year-old, sitting on the porch steps crying. Not the loud, dramatic crying of a tantrum, but the quiet, hopeless crying of a kid who's given up. Emma stood next to him, her small hand on his shoulder, looking worried in that way that 7-year-olds shouldn't have to look worried. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting down my keys. "His bike has a flat tire," Emma said, her voice steady but her eyes showing the strain of trying to be the strong one. "Mama said she'd fix it on the weekend, but Luke wanted to ride it today. He was going to ride with his friend Jacob from next door." I looked at the tiny bike leaning against the porch railing, bright blue with training wheels and a basket on the front. The front tire was completely flat, rubber sagging against the rim. "I can fix that," I said. "You got a bike pump?" Emma shook her head. "Mama was going to buy one. She keeps meaning to, but she forgets because she's tired all the time." "Okay, give me an hour." I drove to Miller's Hardware on First Avenue, the same place Sarah and I used to buy supplies for house projects back when we were young and optimistic about DIY renovations. The old man behind the counter, Ed Miller, recognized me even after all these years. David Fletcher. Heard you were back. How's the back? Hurts. Need a bike pump and a patch kit. Got a kid with a flat tire. His eyebrows went up. Didn't know you had kids. Long story. I bought the pump, a patch kit, and on impulse a new bell for Luke's bike since the old one was rusted through. $32 total. I drove back and found both kids still on the porch, Emma reading to Luke from a picture book about dinosaurs. I set up on the driveway, took off the front wheel and started working. Both kids watched like I was performing open heart surgery, Emma asking questions about how pumps worked and why rubber could be patched, and whether you could patch people the same way. Sort of, I said, thinking about the surgeries I'd had after the shrapnel hit. Doctors patch people all the time, just with different tools. Did doctors patch you? Yeah. Multiple times. Does it hurt? Sometimes. But it's better than the alternative. What's the alternative? Not being here to fix bike tires. Luke giggled at that, the first sound I'd heard from him since I'd arrived. When I finished, I attached the new bell and rang it once. Luke's face lit up like I'd given him a new car. Try it out, I said. Luke climbed on carefully, Emma steadying him until he found his balance, and then he was off, riding in wobbly circles around the driveway, ringing the bell constantly and laughing. Emma watched with a smile, but there was something adult in her eyes, something that made my chest ache. Thank you, she said quietly. She was a serious kid, always watching, always thinking, carrying weight that no 7-year-old should carry. No problem. Are you going to stay here? Like, forever? I don't know. Maybe for a while. I hope you do. She looked down at her shoes. Mama's been happier since you came. She doesn't cry at night as much. I used to hear her crying through the wall every night after she put us to bed, but now she doesn't. Or maybe she does it quieter, but I think she's happier. That stopped me cold. I'd been so focused on my own discomfort, my own displacement, that I hadn't fully considered what Rachel had been going through. A widow in her 30s, raising 2 kids alone, working full-time, drowning in medical debt from her husband's cancer treatments before he died, trying to hold everything together with duct tape and hope. Your mom's very strong, I said finally. I know, but even strong people get tired. That's what my teacher says. She says it's okay to ask for help. Your teacher's smart. Emma looked at me directly, and I saw Mike in her eyes. That same intensity that Rachel had described when she talked about her dead husband. Do you think my dad would be mad that you're here? No. I think he'd be grateful someone's helping take care of you. Grandma Patricia says we're forgetting him, that Mama's disrespecting his memory by letting another man in the house. What do you think? I think I remember him a little bit. He sang songs at bedtime, really bad singing, and he made funny voices when he read stories, and he always smelled like coffee and something else, something I can't remember anymore. She paused. I don't want to forget him, but I also don't want to be sad forever. Is that okay? That's more than okay. That's exactly right. She nodded, satisfied, and went to supervise Luke's bike riding. I sat on the porch steps and watched them, these kids who weren't mine but were somehow becoming mine, and wondered what the hell I was doing. I hadn't signed up for this, hadn't planned to become a father figure to a widow's children, hadn't expected to care this much about a flat tire and a bell that cost $3, but here I was, caring anyway. Rachel got home at 6. The kids ran to her, talking over each other about the bike and the man in the basement who was nice and knew how to fix things. She looked at me over their heads, and I saw something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Later, after the kids were in bed, she knocked on the basement door. Come in. She stayed at the top of the stairs. I just wanted to say thank you for the bike. You didn't have to do that. It was a flat tire, not exactly a major repair. It mattered to them. They're not used to men who stick around and help with things. I set down the book I'd been reading. Your husband's parents, they don't help? They try. But they blame me for Mike's death, I think. He re-enlisted because we needed the money, and his mom thinks if I'd had a better job he wouldn't have had to go back. We don't talk much anymore. That's not fair to you. No, but grief isn't fair. She leaned against the doorframe. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you really doing this? Letting us stay, fixing bikes, being kind to kids who aren't yours? Most people wouldn't. I thought about that, about Sarah, and how she'd always brought home strays, dogs and cats, and once a bird with a broken wing, about coming back from deployments to an empty house and how the silence had felt like a weight on my chest. About standing in that parking lot in Bagram, watching other soldiers get greeted by families while I walked to a taxi alone. I spent 30 years in the army, I said finally. Did 3 combat tours, saw things I'll never talk about, lost friends who deserved to come home more than I did. And through all of it, I told myself I was fighting for something that mattered. For people back home, for families, for kids who'd grow up safe. I paused, but I never had kids. Sarah and I tried, but it didn't happen. And after she died, I realized I'd spent all that time fighting for this abstract idea of families without actually having one of my own. So when I came home and found you and Emma and Luke here, living in my house, and I had a choice to either throw you out or help you, it felt like maybe I could actually do something that mattered, something real instead of abstract. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Mike used to say the same thing, that he was fighting for something bigger than himself. He was right. She nodded. Well, for what it's worth, you are doing something that matters. You're letting my kids have a stable home, maybe for the first time since their dad died. That matters more than you know. After she left, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. For the first time since I'd come home, I didn't feel completely lost. The lawsuit against Midwest Home Services moved slowly. Tom Bradford filed the injunction, and within 2 weeks they were barred from renting any more properties. But the civil case dragged on. Depositions, document requests, motions and counter-motions. In the meantime, life in the house continued. I fell into routines with Rachel and the kids. I'd fix things around the house, the leaky faucet in the kitchen, the loose step on the front porch, the bedroom door that always stuck. Rachel would cook dinner most nights, and she'd call down the stairs to ask if I wanted to join them. At first I said no, feeling like I'd be intruding, but Emma asked me directly one night, her serious little face looking down at me from the top of the basement stairs. "Mr. Fletcher, don't you get lonely eating by yourself?" After that I ate with them. It was awkward at first. I didn't know how to talk to kids. The army didn't exactly prepare you for dinner-table conversations about kindergarten drama and whether dinosaurs could really fly. But gradually it got easier. Luke would tell me elaborate stories about his day, most of which were probably fiction. Emma would ask me about the army, questions that were sometimes too smart for a 7-year-old. Did you ever get scared? Did you have friends who died? Do you have bad dreams? I answered honestly, but carefully. Yes, I got scared. Yes, I lost friends. Yes, I had bad dreams sometimes. She'd nod like I was confirming something she already suspected. One Saturday in November, Rachel asked if I'd come with them to Mike's parents' house for his birthday. He would have been 38. "I don't want to intrude on family time," I said. "You wouldn't be intruding. The kids want you there. And honestly, I could use the backup. Mike's parents they're difficult." We drove to a subdivision in Marion, pulled up to a house with an American flag in the yard and a Gold Star banner in the window. Mike's mom, Patricia, answered the door. She was in her 60s, grey-haired, with Mike's same brown eyes. Those eyes went cold when she saw me. "Who's this?" she asked Rachel. "This is David Fletcher. He's the one who owns the house we're renting. He's been helping us out." Patricia looked me up and down. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what my angle was. "Helping out how?" "Just being a friend," Rachel said quickly. We went inside. Mike's dad, Robert, was more welcoming. Shook my hand, thanked me for my service, asked about my deployments. We talked about the Corps versus the Army, the way only vets can, trading stories and complaints and dark jokes. But Patricia watched me the whole time like I was a threat. When Rachel was in the kitchen helping with lunch, Patricia cornered me in the hallway. "I don't know what you're doing with my daughter-in-law and grandchildren," she said quietly, "but I'm watching you. Rachel's vulnerable right now. She doesn't need some man taking advantage of that. Ma'am, with respect, I'm not taking advantage of anyone. I'm just trying to help. Men always say they're trying to help. Then they disappear when things get hard. Not all men. We'll see." Lunch was tense. Patricia made pointed comments about how hard it must be for Rachel to manage 2 kids alone, about how Mike would have wanted his children raised in a stable environment, about how important it was to honor his memory properly. Each comment felt like a barb aimed at Rachel, suggesting she wasn't doing enough, wasn't grieving right, wasn't raising the kids the way Mike would have wanted. The meal itself was elaborate, clearly meant to show Rachel up. Pot roast with all the trimmings, homemade rolls, 3 different side dishes. Patricia kept saying things like, "Mike always loved my pot roast, remember, Rachel?" Or, "I taught you how to make this stuffing for your first Thanksgiving together, but I know you don't have time to cook like this anymore with your work schedule." Emma pushed food around her plate, not eating. Luke had gone quiet, sensing the tension even if he didn't understand it. Rachel's jaw was clenched so tight I worried about her teeth. I watched Rachel's shoulders get tighter and tighter, until finally I couldn't take it anymore. "Patricia," I said, cutting into whatever she was saying, "I think Rachel's doing an incredible job with these kids. They're smart, kind, well-adjusted despite losing their father. That's because their mother loves them and works her ass off every day to give them a good life. Maybe instead of criticizing, you could acknowledge that." The table went silent. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Patricia's face went red. Robert looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Emma and Luke stared at their plates. "How dare you?" Patricia said, her voice shaking. "You don't know anything about this family. You're just some man who showed up out of nowhere and inserted yourself into their lives. My son died defending this country, and you think you can just replace him?" "I'm not trying to replace anyone," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm trying to help. There's a difference." "Help?" Patricia laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Living in her house, eating meals with her children, playing house with my son's family? I've seen this before. Men who prey on vulnerable widows, who take advantage." "That's enough," Rachel said, standing up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. "Kids, go play in Grandpa's den now, but Mama, now Emma." The kids left quickly. Emma held Luke's hand, guiding him out of the room. Once they were gone, Rachel turned to Patricia. "You don't get to do this," she said. Her voice was quiet, but hard. "You don't get to judge me or question my choices or imply that I'm dishonoring Mike's memory. I loved your son. I still love your son. But he's gone and I'm still here and I have to figure out how to live and raise our children and not drown in grief and debt and loneliness." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "I just want to protect you. Protect them. You're all I have left of Mike. Then protect us by supporting us, not tearing us down. David has been nothing but kind to me and the kids. He fixes things around the house. He helps with homework. He shows up. That's more than most people have done. Because most people aren't trying to... He's not trying to do anything except be decent. And if you can't see that, if you're so blinded by grief that you're going to attack everyone who tries to help me, then maybe we need some space from each other." We left after that. Rachel didn't cry until we were in the car and the kids were buckled into the back seat. Then the tears came silently, running down her face while she gripped the steering wheel. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did. She had no right to talk to you that way. She's grieving. Grief doesn't excuse cruelty, and someone needed to say it." Rachel's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. "Thank you. No one's ever stood up for me like that before. Then people have been failing you." That night after the kids were asleep, Rachel came down to the basement with 2 beers. She handed me one and sat on the bottom step. "Mike's mum called," she said. "She's furious. Says I'm disrespecting Mike's memory by bringing strange men around the kids. I'm not strange, I'm just living in the basement." She smiled a little. "She also said she's consulting with a lawyer about grandparents' rights. She thinks she can get partial custody. Can she? I don't know. Maybe. Mike's will didn't specify anything about custody arrangements if I remarried or had men in my life. She could argue the environment's unstable. That's insane. Yeah, well, welcome to my life." She took a long drink from her beer. "I'm so tired, David. I'm tired of fighting, tired of defending myself, tired of never being enough. Sometimes I think Emma and Luke would be better off without me." "Don't say that. Those kids love you. They love you too. Luke asked me yesterday if you could be his dad now that his real dad's gone. I didn't know what to say to that. The idea of being anyone's father, especially these kids I'd known for barely 2 months, felt enormous and terrifying, and somehow right all at the same time." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "I told him you were our friend, that you were helping us for now, that we couldn't ask you to be more than that because it wouldn't be fair. What if I wanted to be more than that?" She looked at me. "What? Not romantically. I'm not trying to, you're grieving and I'm not, I just mean, I know what you mean." She smiled. "You're saying you're not going anywhere. I'm saying these last 2 months have been the best 2 months I've had in years. I like fixing Luke's bike and helping Emma with her homework and eating dinner with actual people instead of alone in a motel room. I like feeling useful. And I like you, all of you, as a family. We're not your responsibility. Maybe not. But maybe I want you to be. She was quiet for a long time, just sitting there on the step, both of us drinking our beers in comfortable silence. Mike's mom isn't going to stop, she said finally. She'll make this ugly. Then we'll deal with it. Together. Why are you doing this? Really? There has to be more to it than just wanting to help. I thought about that. About Sarah and how I'd failed to save her. About coming home to empty houses over and over. About the friends I'd lost in combat and the guilt of surviving when they didn't. When my wife was dying, I said slowly, I was deployed in Iraq. She didn't tell me how bad it was because she didn't want me distracted. Didn't want me to get killed because I wasn't focused. So she went through chemo and radiation and eventually hospice with her sister taking care of her. And I didn't know until I got the call that she had maybe 2 weeks left. I got emergency leave, flew home and had 9 days with her before she died. I paused, feeling the old familiar weight of it. 9 days out of our entire marriage. And during those 9 days she kept apologizing to me. For dying. For leaving me alone. For not being strong enough. And I kept thinking, this is wrong, she shouldn't be apologizing. I should be apologizing for not being there. Rachel didn't say anything. Just listened. So when she died, I went back to Iraq because I didn't know what else to do. And I kept going back, deployment after deployment, because being in a war zone felt easier than being in that empty house. Because at least in combat, I had a purpose, a mission, something to focus on besides the fact that I'd failed the one person who mattered most. I looked at her. Then I come home and find you and your kids in my house, and for the first time in 6 years, I have a mission again. Something that matters. And yeah, maybe I'm doing it partly for selfish reasons because it makes me feel like less of a failure. But mostly I'm doing it because I know what it feels like to be alone and overwhelmed and drowning. And I figure if I can help you not feel that way, maybe Sarah's death meant something. Maybe my 30 years in the army meant something beyond just killing people. Rachel was crying. She set down her beer and moved to sit next to me on the floor, shoulder to shoulder. You didn't fail her, she said. You didn't fail anyone, feels like I did. Mike felt the same way. After his first deployment, he told me he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd failed his unit because he'd survived and some of them hadn't. He'd lie awake at night making lists of all the things he could have done differently, all the ways he could have saved them. What did you tell him? That survivor's guilt was a liar. That the only way to honor the people he'd lost was to live a life worth surviving for. To come home and be a good dad and husband. To do something meaningful with the time he'd been given. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Funny how we're better at giving advice than taking it. Yeah, funny. We sat like that for a while, not saying anything, just existing in the same space. It felt peaceful in a way I hadn't felt peaceful in a very long time. December came with snow and court dates. Tom Bradford had built a solid case against Midwest Home Services. They'd been running the same scam for 5 years, renting out properties owned by deployed service members, pocketing the money, forging contracts. We had evidence of at least 8 other victims. The company folded 2 weeks before we were scheduled to go to trial, declared bankruptcy, dissolved the LLC, disappeared. Greg Morton and his partners walked away with minimal consequences because they'd hidden their assets well. I got back most of the rent money they'd stolen, about $14,000. Rachel got her deposit back, $3,600. It wasn't justice, but it was something. The bigger problem was Patricia. She'd filed for grandparents' visitation rights, claiming Rachel was creating an unstable environment by allowing a strange man to live in the house with her minor children. The case was scheduled for February. Rachel's lawyer, a woman named Kim Dawson, was blunt. You're going to lose some level of visitation. The court favors grandparents' rights, especially when the father is deceased military. Best case scenario, they get alternating weekends and a few holidays. Worst case, they could push for 50-50 custody. Rachel looked like she might be sick. How do I stop that? You prove you're providing a stable, loving environment. 2-parent household would help. But obviously that's not... What if it was? I interrupted. Both women looked at me. What if Rachel and I got married? Just legally, I mean. Not for romantic reasons, but to show the court she has a stable 2-parent household. That there's another adult in the home helping raise the kids. Kim looked intrigued. That would significantly strengthen the case. Courts like stability, and a marriage would show commitment. Rachel was shaking her head. David, no. That's insane. You can't marry me just to help me keep my kids. Why not? We're already living together. We're already co-parenting in a lot of ways. This would just make it official. Marriage is supposed to mean something. It does mean something. It means I care about you and those kids enough to put it in writing. It means I'm not going anywhere. It means we're a team. But what about you? What do you get out of this? I get to keep being part of this family. I get to help raise two great kids. I get to have a purpose again. That's not enough reason to get married. It's enough for me. Kim cleared her throat. For what it's worth, it would work. The court would see a stable marriage, employed adults, home ownership. Patricia's case would fall apart. Rachel looked at me for a long moment. This is crazy. Probably. But a lot of military marriages start for practical reasons. Benefits, housing, legal protections. Some of them end up meaning more than they started as. Some don't. Either way, it's a legal arrangement between two adults who know what they're getting into. And what happens if one of us wants out later? Then we get divorced like civilized people. But for now, we present a united front. We protect your kids. We build something stable. She was wavering. I could see it. Think about it, I said. Talk to the kids if you want. Whatever you decide, I'll support. 2 days later, she said yes. We went to the courthouse on a Wednesday afternoon, just us and Kim as a witness. The ceremony took 15 minutes. Rachel wore a blue dress. I wore my dress uniform. We signed papers, exchanged rings we'd bought at a jewelry store for $200 total, and walked out legally married. That night we told the kids over pizza. Does this mean Mr. Fletcher is our dad now? Luke asked. It means he's part of our family officially, Rachel said. You can call him David or Dad or whatever feels right. Emma looked at me seriously. Are you going to leave like Daddy did? No, I said, I promise. Everyone leaves eventually, she said. That's what Grandma Patricia says. Not everyone. And not me. I'm staying. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay, can I call you Dad? If you want to. I want to. Luke climbed into my lap. Me too. I want to call you Dad. Rachel's eyes were wet. Okay then, that's settled. The hearing with Patricia was brutal. She brought character witnesses who testified that Rachel was unstable, that she'd rushed into a marriage with a strange man, that the kids needed their grandparents' influence. She had photos of me from the VA hospital with captions suggesting I was mentally unfit. She questioned my PTSD diagnosis, my medication, my ability to be around children. Kim tore her apart on cross-examination, brought up Patricia's own history of depression, pointed out that I'd been helping Rachel for months before we got married, presented letters from Emma's teacher, praising the improvement in her grades and behavior since I'd come into the picture, had Luke's pediatrician testify that he was thriving. Then Rachel took the stand. She talked about Mike, about loving him and missing him and grieving him. She talked about how hard it had been to raise 2 kids alone while drowning in debt and loneliness. She talked about how I'd shown up in her life and given her hope again, given her kids a father figure, given all of them stability. Finally, I testified. The judge asked me directly, "Why did you marry this woman?" I looked at Patricia sitting in the gallery, at Rachel at the defendant's table, at Kim taking notes, at the court reporter typing every word. Because I spent 30 years fighting for families I never had, I said. Because when I came home and found Rachel and her kids in my house, I realized maybe this was my chance to have one. Because those kids deserved a father figure, and I wanted to be that person. And because I'd rather die than let them be hurt by people who claim to love them but only know how to wound them. The judge ruled in Rachel's favor. Patricia got supervised visitation twice a month, 4 hours each time. No overnight stays. No decision-making authority. Patricia screamed at us in the courthouse hallway. You're poisoning them against their real family. Mike would be ashamed of you. Mike would be grateful someone's taking care of his wife and kids, I said calmly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're going home. We drove back to Cedar Rapids in silence. The kids were at school. Rachel and I walked into the empty house together. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. We're married now. You don't have to thank me. We're a team. Are we though, really? Or is this just a legal arrangement that we're both pretending means more than it does? I don't know. What do you want it to be? She looked at me, really looked at me, in a way she hadn't since I'd first showed up on the porch. I want it to be real. I want to stop feeling guilty for being happy when you're around. I want to stop analyzing every moment, wondering if you're going to wake up and realize you made a mistake. I'm not going to wake up and realize that. How do you know? Because I already did wake up. Every day for 2 months after you moved in, I woke up and thought, this is temporary. She'll leave, the kids will forget me, I'll end up alone again. But it kept not happening. You kept being here. The kids kept calling me to dinner, and eventually I stopped waiting for it to end and started hoping it wouldn't. She kissed me then, soft and tentative and real. When she pulled back, she was crying again. I miss Mike, she said. I'll always miss him. But I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know if that makes me a terrible person. It doesn't. It makes you human. What if I'm not ready? Then we go as slow as you need. I've got nowhere else to be. 6 months later, Rachel was pregnant. We hadn't planned it, hadn't even really talked about it as a possibility, but when she told me, standing in the kitchen at 7 in the morning while Emma and Luke ate cereal and argued about whose turn it was to feed the goldfish we'd gotten last month, all I could think was, this is happening, this is real, this is mine. She'd taken 3 tests, she said quietly, pulling me into the pantry where the kids couldn't hear. All positive. I'm about 8 weeks along, the doctor thinks. I don't know how to feel about this. How do you feel? Terrified, excited, guilty, happy, confused, all of it at once. She looked up at me, her eyes searching my face. Are you okay with this? Am I okay with it? Rachel, we're having a baby. Our baby. How could I not be okay with that? Because this wasn't part of the plan. The marriage was supposed to be just legal, just to protect the kids. We weren't supposed to. We've been sleeping in the same bed for 3 months, I reminded her gently. After the marriage, we decided the basement arrangement didn't make sense anymore, that we should at least look like a real couple. We'd started out awkwardly, each clinging to our own side of the queen bed, building a wall of pillows between us. But gradually, over weeks and months, we'd migrated toward each other, started falling asleep touching, waking up tangled together. One thing had led to another, as things do. I know, but I thought we were being careful. Careful isn't the same as perfect. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Mike and I tried for 2 years to get pregnant with Luke. 2 years of tracking cycles and doctor's appointments and hope and disappointment. And now, when I'm not even trying, when this wasn't supposed to happen, the universe has a sense of humor. That's one way to put it. She pressed her hands against her stomach, still flat, no sign yet of the life growing inside. What are we going to tell people? Patricia's going to lose her mind. She already thinks I'm dishonoring Mike's memory. Now I'm having another man's baby less than 3 years after Mike died. We tell them the truth. We're married. We're having a baby. It's nobody's business but ours. Emma wanted a baby sister. Luke wanted a brother. We didn't care either way. We just wanted healthy. But as the weeks passed and Rachel's belly grew, I found myself hoping for a girl. A little girl with Rachel's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. A little girl who'd never know the pain of losing her father, because her father would be there, every day, for everything. The pregnancy was harder than Rachel's previous ones. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Back pain that rivaled mine. Exhaustion so profound she'd fall asleep at the dinner table. I took over more of the household duties. Cooking meals, Emma helped me find recipes online. Doing laundry, getting the kids to school and activities. Patricia sent a text message when she found out about the pregnancy. Only one sentence. "You're replacing my son faster than I thought possible." Rachel cried when she read it. I deleted the message and blocked Patricia's number. But not everything was hard. There were moments of pure joy that caught me off guard. The first ultrasound, seeing the tiny heartbeat flickering on the screen, hearing Emma gasp with wonder. Luke asking if he could sing to the baby through Rachel's belly button. The night Rachel felt the baby kick for the first time and grabbed my hand, pressing it against her stomach so I could feel it too. A daughter, the ultrasound tech told us at 20 weeks. "You're having a little girl." Emma screamed with delight. Luke looked disappointed for about 30 seconds before deciding that sisters were probably okay too. Rachel looked at me with tears in her eyes. "We're having a daughter," she whispered. Yeah, we are. We painted the third bedroom pale yellow because Rachel said she was tired of pink princess themes and wanted something softer, gentler. Emma helped me put together the crib, reading instructions aloud while I tried to figure out why there were always extra screws left over. Luke donated his favorite stuffed bear to be the baby's first toy, a gesture so sweet it made Rachel cry again. Sarah Rose Fletcher was born on a cold February morning, February 14th, which Emma said was perfect because she'd be a Valentine's baby forever. The labor started at 2 a.m., Rachel shaking me awake with, "David, David, it's time." We'd prepared for this. Bags were packed. Kim was on standby to stay with Emma and Luke. But when the moment actually came, I felt completely unprepared, terrified. This was my child, mine and Rachel's, a person we'd created together, and I was responsible for getting both of them through this safely. The drive to Mercy Hospital took 12 minutes, but it felt like hours. Rachel breathed through contractions, her hand crushing mine. I kept checking mirrors, running yellow lights, probably breaking a dozen traffic laws. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of Rachel squeezing my hand hard enough to bruise. 14 hours of watching her in pain and being unable to fix it. 14 hours of nurses and doctors checking monitors and saying everything was progressing normally, while my wife, when had I started thinking of her as truly my wife, suffered? And then Sarah was there. 8 pounds 3 ounces, 21 inches long, dark hair plastered to her tiny skull, eyes squeezed shut. Lungs that could have qualified her for the opera, filling the delivery room with furious screams that said she was not happy about being evicted from her warm home. The doctor placed her on Rachel's chest, and the world stopped. Just stopped. This tiny person, red-faced and angry and absolutely perfect. This tiny person who was mine, my daughter. "You want to cut the cord, Dad?" the doctor asked. I did, my hands shaking so badly the doctor had to guide me. And then Sarah was officially, completely in the world. Our world. My world. I held her while the doctors took care of Rachel, held her against my chest, skin to skin like they'd told us to do, and felt her heartbeat against mine. Felt her tiny hand curl around my finger with surprising strength. Looked into her unfocused eyes and thought, "I will protect you, whatever it takes. For as long as I live, you will never doubt that you're loved. You will never feel abandoned. You will always know that your father chose you, wanted you, would die for you without hesitation." Emma and Luke met their sister that afternoon. Kim brought them to the hospital, both of them clutching cards they'd made with construction paper and markers. Emma's was elaborate, covered in hearts and flowers, and a drawing of the whole family holding hands. Luke's was mostly scribbles, but he'd written, "I love you, baby," in wobbly letters across the top. Emma held Sarah carefully, seriously, like she was handling something precious and breakable. "She's so small," she whispered. "Was I this small?" "Smaller," Rachel said, smiling. Luke touched Sarah's tiny hand with one finger. "She's so small," he said, echoing his sister. "Will she get bigger?" "Eventually. Give her a few years." "Can we keep her?" "Yes, buddy. We definitely get to keep her." Luke looked at me. "Are you her real dad?" "I'm everybody's real dad now." "Good, because I like having a dad." That night, after visiting hours were over and the kids had gone home with Kim, who'd become our friend over the months of legal battles, I sat next to Rachel's hospital bed. Sarah was asleep in the bassinet, making tiny noises. "I never thought I'd have this," I said quietly. "Neither did I, not again, not after Mike." "Are you happy?" She looked at me, at our baby, at the life we'd somehow built out of chaos and fraud and unexpected kindness. "Yeah, I really am." "Are you?" I thought about the motel in September, about the empty house I'd been avoiding for years, about the man I'd been when I came home from Afghanistan, broken, bitter, lost. I thought about the man I was now, a father, a husband, a person who mattered to people who mattered to him. "Yeah," I said, "I really am." Sarah grew fast. By 6 months she was crawling, pulling herself up on furniture, getting into everything. Emma and Luke were obsessed with her, fought over who got to help with bottles and diaper changes and bath time. The house was chaos, loud and messy and full of life. I got a job at the VA hospital working with transitioning veterans, helping them find housing and employment and navigate the bureaucracy. It paid okay and felt meaningful. Rachel got promoted to assistant director of her department. We were comfortable, not rich, but not struggling. Patricia never stopped trying to undermine us, but her influence weakened over time. The kids saw through her manipulation. Emma especially would come home from supervised visits and report everything. Grandma Patricia said, "You're not my real dad." I told her, "You are too." She got mad. "What did you say after that?" I'd ask. "I said you read me stories and helped with homework and came to my dance recital. Real dads do that. Biology dads just share DNA. Smart kid." I know. On what would have been Mike's 40th birthday, we drove to the cemetery. Rachel, me, all 3 kids. We brought flowers and a birthday cake with candles. We sat in the grass and ate cake and told Sarah about her father, about how brave he'd been, how funny, how much he'd loved his family. "Do you think he's mad?" Luke asked. "That we have a new dad?" Rachel looked at me. I shook my head. "I think he's grateful," Rachel said. "I think he's happy we're all okay." Emma was quiet, sitting next to Mike's headstone. Then she said, "I remember him a little. Not a lot, but a little. He used to sing me songs at bedtime, really bad singing." "Terrible singing," Rachel agreed, smiling through tears. "He couldn't carry a tune to save his life." "David sings good," Luke said. "He knows all the Disney songs. Different skill sets," I said. Emma looked at me. "Can you love 2 dads? Is that allowed?" "Absolutely. Love doesn't run out. You can love your first dad for who he was and love your second dad for who he is. They're both real." She nodded slowly. "Good. Because I do." We stayed at the cemetery for an hour, talking about Mike, laughing at stories Rachel told, teaching Sarah the name of her father even though she was too young to understand. Before we left, Emma put her hand on the headstone. "Bye, Daddy," she said. "I'll see you next time. And don't worry. David takes good care of us." That night, lying in bed next to Rachel, I felt her hand find mine in the dark. Sarah was asleep in the bassinet next to our bed, making those tiny snuffling noises that newborns make. "Thank you," Rachel whispered. "For what? For showing up, for staying, for loving us even when it was complicated, for giving me Sarah, for being the father that Emma and Luke needed, for being the husband I didn't know I needed." I thought about that, about the word husband, about how it had started as a legal arrangement, a strategy to protect her kids from Patricia's manipulation, about how somewhere along the way it had become real, about how I'd fallen in love with this woman without meaning to, without planning to, without even realizing it was happening until one day I woke up and couldn't imagine my life without her in it. "Especially when it's complicated," I said. "Do you ever regret it? Coming home and finding us in your house, starting all of this? Not for a second, not even when Luke colored on your dress uniforms with permanent marker?" "Okay, maybe for a second that day." I smiled in the darkness. "But overall, no regrets. This is everything I didn't know I wanted." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I love you. I know I haven't said it before. I know this started as something practical, something to protect the kids. But somewhere along the way it became real for me. You became real for me, and I love you, David Fletcher. I love you too, Rachel Fletcher. I've loved you for months. I just didn't want to push you, didn't want you to feel obligated to feel something you didn't feel." "How long?" "The pancake morning, I think, when you cried because you'd burned breakfast and you said you were a terrible mother, and I realized I wanted to make sure you never felt that way again. That I wanted to be there for every breakfast, burned or perfect, for every hard morning and every good night, for all of it. That was only 6 weeks after you moved in." "I know. I'm a fast learner." She laughed softly, then winced as Sarah started crying. "Feeding time." "I'll get her," I said, already moving. "You rest." I brought Sarah to Rachel, helped position her for nursing, then sat on the edge of the bed and watched my wife feed our daughter while the rest of the house slept. Through the walls, I could hear Emma's gentle snoring. Luke talked in his sleep sometimes, little snippets of conversations with imaginary friends. The house creaked and settled around us, familiar sounds that I'd once thought were ghosts of my old life, but now understood were just the sounds of home. Sarah fell back asleep after eating, milk-drunk and content. I took her, burped her, changed her diaper, put her back in the bassinet. Rachel was already half asleep, exhausted in that bone-deep way that new mothers are exhausted. I should move back to the basement, I whispered. Give you more room. Let you sleep better. Her eyes opened. Don't you dare. This is where you belong. Right here, where I belong. The words hit me hard. For 30 years I'd belonged to the army. I'd belonged on bases and in war zones and anywhere the military told me I was needed. After Sarah died, I'd belonged nowhere. I'd been a ghost haunting my own life, going through motions without purpose. But now I belonged here, in this bed next to this woman, in this house with these children, in this life we'd built from chaos and fraud and unexpected grace. I climbed back into bed, wrapped my arm around Rachel, felt her relax against me. Through the darkness, I could hear Sarah breathing, could hear Emma and Luke in their rooms, could hear the steady rhythm of the family I'd somehow become part of. Sarah grew fast the way babies do. By 6 months she was crawling, pulling herself up on furniture, getting into everything with determined curiosity. Emma and Luke were obsessed with her, fought over who got to help with bottles and diaper changes and bath time. The house was chaos, loud and messy and full of life. I got a job at the VA hospital, working with transitioning veterans, helping them find housing and employment and navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of benefits and disability claims. It paid $54,000 a year and felt meaningful. I'd sit across from guys who'd just come back from Iraq or Afghanistan, guys who looked as lost as I'd felt in that hospital parking lot, and I'd tell them, it gets better. Not easier, but better. Rachel got promoted to assistant director of her department, a position that came with actual authority and a salary that let us start paying down medical debt. We were comfortable, not rich, but not struggling. We could afford Emma's dance classes and Luke's soccer league and Sarah's endless supply of diapers. Patricia never stopped trying to undermine us, but her influence weakened over time. The supervised visitations continued twice a month, and every time the kids came back they'd report the latest manipulation attempts. Grandma Patricia said, "You're not my real dad," Emma told me after one visit, rolling her eyes. I told her, "You are too." "What did you say after that?" "I said you read me stories and helped with homework and came to my dance recital. I said real dads do that. Biology dads just share DNA." Smart kid. I know. On what would have been Mike's 40th birthday, we drove to Cedar Memorial Park where Mike was buried. We brought flowers, a birthday cake with 40 candles, and a blanket to sit on. All 5 of us sat in the grass next to Mike's grave and ate cake and talked about him. Rachel told stories about how they'd met, how Mike had been terrible at chemistry, but great at making her laugh. Emma shared the few memories she had, his bad singing, his funny voices. "Do you think he's mad?" Luke asked. "That we have a new dad?" Rachel looked at me. "I think he's grateful," she said. "I think he's happy we're all okay. Love doesn't run out, sweetie. You can love your first dad and your second dad at the same time." Emma was quiet, sitting next to Mike's headstone with Sarah in her lap. Then she said, "I remember him a little. He used to sing me songs at bedtime. Really bad singing." "Terrible singing," Rachel agreed, smiling through tears. "He couldn't carry a tune to save his life." "David knows all the Disney songs," Luke said, "and he makes up funny words that make them better. Different skill sets," I said. Emma looked at me. "Can you love 2 dads? Is that allowed?" "Absolutely. Love doesn't run out. You can love your first dad for who he was and love your second dad for who he is. They're both real." "Good. Because I do." Her voice got quieter. "I just wish I remembered more about him." "That's what stories are for," Rachel said. "We'll keep telling you stories about your dad so you'll always know who he was." Before we left, Emma put her hand on the headstone. "Bye, Daddy. I'll see you next time. David takes really good care of us." Sarah reached out and patted the granite. "Dada," she said clearly. "That's right," I said, my voice thick. "That's your brother and sister's first Dada, and he would have loved you so much." We drove home in comfortable silence, the kids eventually falling asleep in the back seat, Sarah in her car seat making soft snoring sounds. Rachel reached over and took my hand. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not being threatened by Mike, for honoring his memory instead of trying to erase it, for understanding that the kids needed to know their father, even the one who died. He was a good man. They should know that. You're a good man too. The best one I know. High praise. I mean it." She squeezed my hand. "Mike was brave and funny and kind. but he was also gone. You're here. You show up every single day and you choose us every single day, and that matters more than you know. When we got home, I carried Luke inside while Rachel carried Emma, and somehow managed to get Sarah's car seat too. We tucked the kids into bed, then collapsed on our own bed, still wearing our cemetery clothes, too tired to even change. Do you ever miss it? Rachel asked in the darkness. The army. The structure and purpose and sense of mission? I thought about that. Sometimes, I admitted, I missed the clarity, always knowing what you were supposed to do next, always having a clear objective. Civilian life is messy, she laughed. That's one word for it, but no, I don't miss it, not really, because I traded one mission for another, and this one matters more. Protecting a family instead of a country? Building one. There's a difference. She rolled over, pressed against my side. I'm glad you found us, even if it was through fraud and chaos and a scam property management company. Best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than the army. Way better than the army. The army gave me purpose. You gave me a reason. What's the difference? Purpose is external. A reason is internal. Purpose is what you do. A reason is why you do it. She was quiet for a moment, then, you know I love you, right? Like really actually love you, not just appreciate you or care about you or am grateful for you, but love you. I know. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Why does it scare you? Because I've lost love before. I know how much it hurts. And the thought of losing this, losing you, losing them, it terrifies me more than anything I faced in combat. You're not going to lose us. You don't know that. No, she said firmly. I don't. None of us know what's going to happen tomorrow or next year or 30 years from now, but I know right now in this moment we're together. We're a family, and we're choosing to be together every single day. That's what matters. She was right. The future was unknowable, uncertain, terrifying in its infinite possibilities. But the present, this moment, lying in bed next to my wife while our children slept safely in their rooms, this was real. This was mine. I'd spent 30 years fighting in someone else's war, protecting families I'd never met, children I'd never know, but I'd finally come home to fight for something that was completely, perfectly mine, and I was going to keep fighting for it every single day for the rest of my life, because that's what fathers do, real fathers, the kind who show up and stay and love without keeping score, without expecting medals or recognition or gratitude. The kind who change diapers and fix bikes and attend dance recitals and read bedtime stories until their voices go hoarse. The kind who hold their wives when they cry, and their children when they're scared, and their babies when they won't sleep at 3 in the morning. The kind I'd never thought I'd get to be until a widow and 2 kids and a fraudulent property management company gave me a second chance at everything I thought I'd lost when Sarah died. The kind I was still learning to be one day at a time, in a house that had gone from empty to full, from silent to loud, from mine to ours, a house that had become a home not because of what it contained, but because of who filled it with love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family, and I wouldn't change a single thing,